We live in turbulent times. It's unusual times in many, many ways, and not least the world of work. The world of work is changing before our eyes and has changed enormously in the past few years. I think we're aware of the last few years, the pandemic, all the things that happened. The view of what work is changed in that time greatly. People working from home, people getting used to it, people seeing their family, people enjoying that a lot. But then afterwards, maybe people missing the office and so on. So it's been a time of huge turbulence and change. And I think a lot of that change isn't going anywhere, a lot of it's staying. And work is changing all the time, like how people see work and where work's going. Like there's big trends in the past, but they're accelerating now. So in the next couple of years, millennials, which I don't quite make the criteria for, not quite. I try to squeeze myself to be a millennial, but not quite. But their view of work is clearly different from previous generations, like baby boomers and so on. They'll quit their job, half of them, in the next couple of years. Also, 2/3 of primary school children will have jobs that don't yet exist, that don't currently exist, you can't apply for. And lots of businesses that are around today won't be around soon, astonishingly soon in some cases. So what we might take for granted today as being accepted reality might not be there very soon. So things are constantly changing. Even in the post-COVID period, working from home was maybe about 5% of people before COVID. That's obviously spiked hugely during the pandemic, but is still stuck. People are still working at home greatly. And in Scotland, that figures, almost half of people to some degree are working hybrid. And people have put great value in that. It's changed their lives. It's made their lives different. It's given them different work-life balance. And they value that to close to 10% of a pay rise. And if you imagine in the cost of living crisis that we're in just now, that shows you just how much value people put on having those different working conditions. Another really interesting aspect of this new world of work is that it really helps minority groups. Minority groups, interestingly, greatly appreciate more flexible working circumstances than others, which was a really interesting piece of learning we had. So, people in work, as I said, these are evolving trends, but it's really accelerated, and their expectations of what work can be have really evolved. Their expectations are higher, broadly speaking, so they expect flexibility, hours and location. They want to have a sense of belonging and to be personally fulfilled by work, which perhaps in previous generations isn't something that people would have said work should bring you. They want to be appreciated by people they work with. They constantly want opportunities to develop and learn and move their careers forward. They want work to be a safe place where they feel comfortable and able to bring their true self to work and not to feel judged. And they expect to have autonomy, and that's a real dynamic that we are seeing a lot, and we've always valued at Cobry as autonomy, but it's a real dynamic now with the rising expectations around autonomy and what's possible for running a complex organisation where you need accountability. So there's a really interesting dynamic there between those two things that we're seeing. So, as I say, these are trends that have been building for many years, but the pandemic just accelerated that enormously to where we are today. And this isn't just change for the workers, for people leading organisations. There's challenges that come with this. So how to manage in this new era when people's expectations have changed so much, it's a real challenge. How to collaborate effectively. How to innovate when your teams might be in different locations, might be working at different times. It's complex. How to be secure when people are, again, working in different locations, different devices, different skill sets. Sustainability, the biggest challenge of our time. How do you deal with that while also dealing with all these other challenges that come with hybrid work, working from home, and getting the maximum return and the maximum value for all the money you've spent and lots of tech and on your team. So change can certainly be tough. Like, none of us love change. It's not human nature to love change. But when it comes to business, the alternative isn't great. And there's some harsh quote out there, from a general. It's like, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. We're not quite as harsh as that about it, but it's certainly there's a kernel of truth in there that if you're not up for change, if you're not up for embracing it, then life could be challenging for a business. Good example of this is, again, not being a millennial, I do remember Blockbuster Video and going to the video store. There was local alternatives like Global and things like that, but Blockbuster's the famous one. There's car makers which are obviously still around, and there was iTunes and radio and things like that. So all industries that were incredibly successful felt like, how could these go away? But yet they were all enormously disrupted. Their entire sectors were enormously disrupted by other players who we now take for granted, but at one point were scrappy upstarts that were fighting into the picture. So, those are dramatic examples, but subtler equivalents might occur in your industry, in your sector. If you're not innovating and pushing forward with how you work, someone down the street or across town might be moving quicker than you and taking those steps. So what to do? All this change, all these changing expectations, what do we do about it? And that's from a different presentation. The right answer is don't panic. Don't panic. That's right. Don't panic. Aim to respond to the reality of the situation. Don't put your head in the sand. And that's easy to say, much harder to do. It's a very complex, evolving situation. And we always try and work to sort of thrive in the face of the challenges and not just survive. And it's a mantra within Cobry that we say change can be a beautiful thing, but obviously change can be horrible as well. But if it's managed well, it can be a beautiful thing. So for us, there's two paths forward to embrace this new reality that we're facing. One is culture, and one is technology. Constantly evolving culture. This is a quote I really like. I feel like it encapsulates the fact that this isn't easy and it might not be pretty at times, and certainly within Cobry we've had to have lots of tough conversations over a sustained period of time about how we work together, how we value each other, how we interact with customers. And it's not always pretty, it's not always rainbows and unicorns, but I thought that quote really summed up like what that process is like and why it can be so nourishing and enjoyable. But yeah, as with probably most companies that give advice, the risk is that what we advise others to do, we're at constant risk of failing to do ourselves because we're so busy serving our customers. So we've really consciously, especially in the last year and a half, sought to avoid that trap because it's so easy to fall into. So in Cobry culture, there's things that are probably, you hear a lot of organisations say, like innovation, collaboration, drive for excellence, absolutely. We also have a layer that above that where we talk about nimbleness, being human and being vibrant. So talking to our customers on a human level, trying to make working with us fun, that's the vibrancy part. Like, it's not that business doesn't need to be so serious, and being nimble, being able to respond to challenges really quickly. Now, to support that, we over the last sort of 18 months have brought in, a lot of these are long-standing, but these are all elements of what we do at Cobry to support that culture and to support our teams so they can be their best selves. You'll be glad to hear I'm not going to talk about basically any of these today. Could be here for hours and hours. Even that top left one, the 4-day week alone, is a separate presentation in itself. So this has been a huge process of, within the team, talking to each other, listening again, and adding these things over time and really trying to be proactive about how we support those core values. When it comes to technology, the other part from culture, we're remote first, so, pulling out from that previous slide, we're asynchronous because of the 4-day week and people in different locations. We're not necessarily in the same place at the same time talking to each other. We have to be highly, highly secure. We give advice, and if we got in trouble with security, it would be a terrible look for us. So we use a zero trust model, where the security sits around the person, the user, not around a firewall. A very flexible way of dealing with security when people are in lots of different locations, different devices. As I just said, any device, any location, the way we work, it doesn't matter what your device is, it doesn't matter where you are, as long as you've got data, you can do everything within Cobry. And that's the concept of collaboration equity. So everyone has the ability to work, everyone can access every system, no matter where they are in the world, no matter what device they're on. So our encouragement would be to embrace the change. So what does that look like? So we've been in business for nearly 10 years. I first moved somebody to the cloud in 2007. So we've always been obsessed with the future of work and where it's going. But that, as I said, with the pandemic has accelerated more and more, and the challenge is getting even more exciting. So hopefully in the culture side of things, we can be inspiring to others. We're not management consultants, and nor do we want to be, so we're not coming at it from that end of the telescope. We're not coming in with advice and lots of PowerPoint presentations about your org chart and stuff like that. A lot of those management consultants have added in technology, divisions to enhance what they're talking about more broadly. We were coming at it from the other side. We come at it from the tech, and then we have long-standing expertise in change management to go with that tech, so that it's a whole picture and the people are brought with you, and it's not just tech standing alone. So every business needs this tech stack. I'm not going to talk about it. There's obviously other things, but we know these core systems are needed by every business. But the one I'm kind of here talking about today is the collaboration platform. So we advise people on what to pick here, and try and help them. But you want to have modern systems in all these areas, web-based cloud systems that integrate well with other systems, so that you can run smoothly on those sort of previous principles I talked about. So collaboration platform, the absolute core of your operations, how your business works. Which collaboration platform would I suggest? Well, as a Google Cloud partner and somebody that's long advocated, you'll be shocked to hear that it's Google Workspace. So Gmail, Google Drive, Google Calendar, Docs, Sheets, all that stuff. Now, you might say, well, you would say that, and that's fair enough, I get that. But I really promise you, I'm not here shilling just for Google Workspace and Google Cloud. I really do genuinely believe this. As I say, 2007 is when I first moved people, and I have real strong views about why it makes all of this new world of work a different story. So, for example, this is a study that shows it drives culture change. When people switch, they prefer it from what they left, the system they left behind. It's the best system for working mobile in different environments. It leads to more engaged employees, increased productivity. And the more that people use it, the more tools they use within the system, the more they enjoy it. So you can see that parts of what I've talked about is the new challenges of work. It's addressing head on. And the old tech, I remember when the pandemic hit, so there's so many companies panicking, worrying about what they were going to do. Spinning up VPNs, trying to make them work, people having to go into the office briefly to download files and things like that. All that stuff started creaking. When the pandemic hit and lockdown hit in March 2020, we didn't get a single support call from any of our customers about the pandemic hitting. But they all were using these technologies, and they were using it in a way that we had helped them with. We trained them, they knew how to use the systems. So we were getting ahead of these trends, as it were, so there was no disruption because of that. And in my view, obviously because I started the company having used old tech, I just can't believe it. In the previous to starting the company, I was in charge of looking after tech for the couple of companies I work for, and I just couldn't believe how bad the tech is that people have to use in a lot of work environments. In fact, the vast majority of work environments, it's expensive, it's too complex, it's got risks, serious security risks. It's barely fit for purpose a lot of the time. It's really hard for people to get the work done, and it's just a bad experience. So I know I'm here as a Google Cloud partner saying Workspace, but really I felt businesses needed a challenger offering, something that was different, that really tackled where work really was and where it was going. So I mentioned these big disruptors, very famous companies that have absolutely smashed the sectors that they were in. What's the common ingredient across all of them? They just happen to run on Google Workspace and Google Cloud. Is that a coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. And we talk about this term digital dexterity, all of this coming together for companies to react to what's happening, but also to set themselves up for success for the future, because the change has been huge in the last 2 or 3 years, but that's not going to stop. It's going to increase. So you really want businesses to be set up to be digitally dexterous, able to pivot, able to collaborate, able to work in different locations, able to effortlessly innovate and work together so they can outpace their competitors. So this is a really big concept for us. And yeah, to summarise, culture, like to deal with this new world of work, we have to think about culture. We need to think about the technology that underpins that culture. And I would argue you need to think about Cobry, but you can miss that bit out if you want. So thanks very much for listening.
Thanks, Colin. So my name's James Goddard, and I work for Google. My job title is a partner manager. And the area in particular that I look after is what we call our scaled segment in the UK and Ireland. So those are typically organisations that are either exploring the idea of Google but have never touched it before, or they're organisations that have perhaps tried it at a small level and are kind of curious, right, how do I ramp this up in a way which is going to get me from A to B very quickly but not break anything at the same time. And that kind of leads a nice segue into why we have a partner model at Google and why we look to companies like Cobry and why we work with them so closely. And as Colin touched on, their 4-day work week, as someone who works with them on a regular basis, is awesome. It was news to me they were on a 4-day work week about 3 weeks ago, just because their productivity never drops off and the way in which they rotate staff and we're all seamlessly talking and connecting. So they're a great example of a company which uses our tools to the top level. So why would we work with partners rather than saying, just come to us directly, come talk to me at the booth over there? Why do we have what some would call as kind of a middle organisation in between us and yourself maybe as a client organisation? Will it cost you more money? I always get asked that. Surely if there's someone else involved, this is going to cost me more. And then what happens to my direct relationships with Google? Am I still going to have an account manager at Google, someone who can support me, someone who can directly tell me what's happening, what's the latest and greatest news coming out of the organisation and vendor itself? So, firstly, I want to debunk the myth. No, you do not lose any access to your Google team. You still have full access to Google directly whilst working with Cobry. And the brilliant thing is, you now have an extra layer of support of certified experts and specialists who themselves have built a business in a super agile, awesome way. And they're honestly a privilege to work with in the way they've set it up. So you kind of can use their own blueprint as an example, but then we can also support you with, hey, what if I'm an organisation that's been on a different system, worked differently for a long, long time and was scared of changing? We can help you with that, and we'll work really closely with Cobry. We're all in it together. I'd also say that another great reason of working with one of our partners like Cobry is the flexibility you have when you come on this journey with things like your billing. You don't want to be burdened down with all these issues, burning company credit cards to pay for things. They can offer a really nice flexible billing system. Take all that off your hands. All that admin's work's gone. We don't want you stuck working on admin. We want you focused on innovation, so that you can disrupt your industries and achieve more productivity. So I also want to debunk the myth that working with a third party or a partner of ours like Cobry would be more expensive. I get asked this a lot. That's not the case at all. Google offers various funding mechanisms to our partners to ensure that they're just as competitive. Well, they have the ability to be just as competitive with price as they would going directly with us as Google as a vendor. So I'm very firmly in the camp of explore a partner first. Don't rule it out. You can come speak to me over in the Cobry booth as someone who's not aligned to Cobry specifically, but aligned to our partner ecosystem, to give you a very independent view on the benefits of that in more detail. Also happy to discuss, perhaps what I'm seeing from a perspective of what digital native organisations that were born digital are doing versus what traditional organisations are doing at the moment who are speaking to us to disrupt their industry or move quickly. Some are doing it out of choice, which is great because they want to disrupt before they're disrupted. Others are saying, don't look up, meteor heading towards me, I need to do something different now and move very quickly. Again, maybe I can share some insights of what we're seeing as Google. Lovely to meet you all, and also thank you to any locals from Glasgow. First time here, everyone's been super welcoming, and I will most definitely be back again soon as a result. So thank you. So,
I don't know if there's time, is there?
What time is it? Yeah, if you have any questions, we do have 10 minutes, so we can take them over at the booth or you can ask them here.
You've mentioned that you're able to use any device, any platform to be able to do your work. Have you noticed any additional security issues or any extra steps you've needed to take to allow that?
Good question. I guess the zero trust model helps a lot with that. That it's in Google's world, everything hangs around your credentials, your username, password. But we always recommend, and obviously cobbler shoes, we do it too, multi-factor authentication. So that's a real help with that. And Google has a lot of clever stuff around the zero trust stuff. It's like kind of AI, like sensing location or change of device, sensing risk factors. But I guess multi-factor authentication would be one of the biggest ones that were kind of, it's mandatory. And for key more senior members of the team, even going as far as Google are really far on with the kind of the security keys, like a physical second factor that can't be even theoretically intercepted, that arguably an SMS second factor text could be. I mean, incredibly niche possibility, but it could happen. So for going super secure, we can use those, quite often it's Ubico security keys.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else, or happy? Oh, there's a man.
Do you find a lot of people not realising that Google are in the business space? And if so, what sort of, how do you counter that?
Such a good question. Yes, is the simple answer. I think people they know of Google, I think, and from the consumer tech side of things, maps and countless bits of technology that everyone knows about, used by billions of people. But I think there is an awareness gap that they just don't know, as I said, that they don't know there's an alternative, and quite often what we encounter is people comparing like two bad options to try and solve their problem, where you're like, did you know there's actually another way that you could consider? So that is something that I guess in our marketing and our sales we do. We work extra hard, I guess, to evangelise and sort of missionary type work sometimes to make people aware. Step one, that it exists, and then step two, talk about why it's good. But you're absolutely right, that's probably one of our biggest challenges. Yeah.
Hi, Dan from Forum. We've been running a 4-day work week since end of January.
Oh wow!
And it's been going great. One of the challenges that we have, because we're also a Google Workspace client, one of the challenges that we do have is for the asynchronous working, we use another platform called Asana to tag. So I'm just wondering, kind of in terms of integrations there, because we do find that it's almost kind of stepping outside of that ecosystem a little bit. Is there any kind of integration? It might be something from the booth to talk about, but I think we've got quite a few different platforms that we use in various areas. Yeah. We'd love to be all in kind of one umbrella.
Yeah, we could have some fun chat about APIs.
Yeah. But so you guys use Asana to
we do use Asana. Asana. If we didn't have Asana, a lot of what I just mentioned, Asana working with Google is a power combo. Yeah, but this isn't a pitch for Asana either, but the team will be very happy to talk about that in more detail at the booth. Yeah, for sure.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
No worries. Thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm very concerned about privacy, and I wonder, how does Google Workplace work in the sense of, if I don't want Google to track my activities, whether at work or outside of work, on the same machine, how do I avoid like vendor lock-in, or how do I avoid being tracked for advertising purposes? How does that affect if I'm in a company? Is there a clear division between what you're tracking for the consumer point of view or from the business point of view, and how do I avoid being tracked?
Yeah, great question, and it's definitely a concern we hear from other people, because Google's so famous for these very prominent, consumer products that in advertising and so on. So, yeah, Google's work tools or business tools are a completely distinct environment in that sense. There's very strict agreements that come with those. So when we'll sign deals with customers, their legal team will go over those in great detail and to understand where's data being stored. And there's Google are very conscious of this, so they're very careful around how the controls that are over how your data is used. So there's a great amount of settings and tools within admin consoles to shape like the extent of what is covered. So for instance, you can choose in Google where you store your data, for instance, whether you want to store it in the EU or elsewhere and things like that. So yes, it's a concern that we hear from other people because of the wider picture, but Google treat the business side of their operations very differently.
Yeah, I can elaborate on that a little bit. So yeah, we're completely separated from the ads organization. There's no common ground in that area, I think you're assuming. We're not, even as a Google employee, I can't get access or anywhere near to your data. That's your data. Our mission as an organization is to make the world's, loosely speaking, you have to Google the example, but to make the world's data universally accessible and useful. But the key thing is it's your data, it's not our data, and we're not looking to take your data. Like I said, even as an employee, there is no way I can get close to seeing what you do with your data. That's your business.
Hopefully that was useful. Any more? Are we out of time? Are we? Yeah, we're out. I've been told we're out of time anyway. But well, thanks very much for listening.